Hey, sport. Last night your mom told me that you're thinking about getting into powerlifting. Now, you don't learn how to pleasure a woman by waxing your meat all night, so you can't go around learning to powerlift by maxing out all the time. Lucky for you, I'm one of the top 50 powerlifters of all time, and I'm going to tell you how you can go about getting started in the sport of powerlifting. Now, before we get elbow deep in your fisting journey into the sport of powerlifting, there are some concepts that we need to go over and some verbiage that's going to pop up a lot while we're talking about programming when it's associated with powerlifting. Block periodization. Powerlifting is hard because the human body is chaotic. Just ask your girl if she's pregnant every time her period's a day or two late, and you'll get what I mean. Block periodization, there we go, is the attempt that powerlifters use, coaches in powerlifting use, in order to try and control that little chaoticness that goes on. So usually, if we've got this time and we've got strength, what you want is it to just go. Yeah, that's a really good dotted line. You want to constantly be getting stronger. Shit doesn't work like that. Sometimes you're wicked strong. Sometimes you're not strong. Sometimes you start making progress. Sometimes you plateau. Sometimes you get wicked strong, and it essentially boils down to looking like this. Not the best scenario for anyone. So what block periodization does is it gets rid of this chaoticness, and it kind of takes what you want to happen in smaller chunks. So you've got our plot, you've got our strength over time. When you compete, if you're following block periodization correctly, your strength is high. After you compete, you're going to be at your weakest. What block periodization is going to do is it's going to look at this drop, and it's going to formulate some sort of block. I'm going to label it H, and it's going to fill this time between those 2 points. Great bar graph. And then you're going to come out of here, not at your peak, but somewhere in the middle. So some point here. And then you've got another block, probably the same length as block H. I'm going to label it S, which is going to take these points and play around with them a little bit. And since we are educated powerlifters, what we do in these blocks is going to be determined on what the previous block was. This block, block H, is called a hypertrophy block, where you don't exactly get stronger, you make your muscles more elastic, and you work on building size. This S block is your strength block. If you're really strong out of your hypertrophy block, you can go super high with that strength block. And you're going to know where you're going to come out. You're going to come out at this low point. But if you're at the low point, coming out of the hypertrophy block, you're going to go and you're going to be able to come out on the high point of that strength block. And what you do at the high point in the strength block, what you do in response in the low point of those strength blocks is completely different, and it's based on how you are. So you've got a strength block A and a strength block B, and they are not equal to each other whatsoever. But depending on where you are, they are interchangeable. And how you know what to do with each of these blocks is determined on your C and S, your central nervous system. What does a strength block look like? We've got this graph, and peak, bottom, and then we've got these 2 points, and you go kind of like this, and then hopefully it looks like this, and then you reach a point where you don't know where you are, but you want to be able to project where you are. And this block is going to be a P block for peaking. And it doesn't matter where you are in this P, it's going to bring you to your peak physical condition. And this is where you want to compete. And then after you compete, your central nervous system, your CNS, is going to be absolutely bopped, and you're going all the way back down, and you kind of repeat this cycle. Yeah. That is basically what block periodization wants to do. You've got your peak block, you've got your hypertrophy block, you've got your strength building blocks, you've got another peak block, hypertrophy, strength building, and it repeats going on from there. What does this look like? What do blocks generally look like? Blocks are usually structured in 4 to 6 week cycles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What you do on week 1 is not what you do on week 2, week 3, week 4. And it's all based on what program are you following? What progression are you doing? Now, beginner powerlifters, you're not going to be super zoned in as to what this is going to be doing. And these 2 weeks afterwards don't even apply to you. That's for advanced powerlifters. You're going to have 4-week blocks. And the best powerlifting program that you can do as a beginner is based on the rest of the definitions that we're going to be going over. And block periodization, we've got week 1 where, let's just go through an example program. You could go and do a 3x5 at 75%. Week 2, 3x3 at 80%. Week 4, 3x1 at 85 to 90%. Week 4, rest. Rest doesn't mean don't go to the gym. Rest means 50%, 5 by 1 to 3. We're going to go over what that is in a minute. But block periodization basically is going to look like this. This program right here is probably the best program as a beginner powerlifter that you can do in order to mitigate all those, I don't know what's going on, so I'm just going to max out instead. This is a block periodization program called 531 that's going to allow you to measure your progress and avoid injury so you end up going further. Linear periodization. Linear periodization. So we already went over that your strength over time looks awful. And it's never actually, you can't ever actually tell where you are anywhere when you're doing any sort of anything. You don't know where your strength is. But once you have blocks down, you can kind of zone things in. And if you remember from literally 10 seconds ago, we've got these histograms going on where you could be in the high point up here and you know that you've got to go down in your next block, or vice versa, where they're interchangeable, all based on how your central nervous system is responding to your training. So let me actually get my eraser because I threw it over here like a good low boy. What you want to do, I have a degree in math. So if you have any questions about how we are talking about things, put them in the comments because I'm about to go into a little bit of more mathematical thinking. So we've got time, which is staying constant, and we've got progress. Now, progress equals the integral of strength with respect to time. That's calculus. Congratulations, you're now the smartest people when it comes to strength sports. So, what you want is you want this line to be steady, like that. But if we look at P prime, which strength, P prime is strength. Let's actually get a different color going. Let's get a different color going. Ah! Mainly sounds only. P prime is going to be in black. What's up, my homies? Don't cancel me. P prime is going to be all over the place. So what it's going to look like is it's looking kind of messy. Your strength-wise is going to be a little messy. And what linear periodization does is it takes the volume of training. Volume equals sets times reps, which should make sense, but this is a beginner powerlifting video. So I'm going to explain things as if you've never been in the gym before, but don't go away because this is applicable to even the most advanced lifters. Somehow, some people don't understand this at the top levels, which is astounding. Looking at all you guys who copy and paste programs for your clients. So, volume is sets and reps. We've got progress, which is trying to be linear. What the volume does, another graph, because we like graphs today. When you are strong, so we've got strength up here. Your strength is up here. Your volume is not going to be up there. Your volume is going to be below that. And this all goes back to the central nervous system. When your strength takes a dip, your volume will go likewise. But you notice we've got this area in between these two curves. And that allows us, if we zoom in a little bit on it, so let's post-editing Patrick, let's zoom in on this. What you can do is you can change how much volume you have based on where you are strength-wise. That's variability in volume. But what linear periodization does, it takes the area between these 2 points, which is, it'll be where you are strength-wise versus where your CNS allows you. So it's going to be SW minus SCNS, strength-wise, versus minus your where your strength is going to be based on your CNS. And it's going to start off low, and it's going to look at the blocks. So we've got this block, we've got this block, and we've got this block. We've got 3 blocks going on here. What linear progression does, is it's going to increase the volume throughout the entire block. Then you take a deload, and you're at a different point in the block. Take a deload, different point in the block. What linear progression does is it increases the amount of weight that you are doing throughout a block. So it's got these little things, and you notice at the beginning you've got a really steep, but when your strength is going down, it's not that steep. You're going to have to be a little bit reactive when you're training and reacting to your linear progression. when it comes to programming yourself or programming clients. And if you're programming clients, don't do it. But for the sake of being a beginner powerlifter, you've got your 4-week block. You've got your 3x5, 3x3, 3x1, and a deload. This is at, was it 75%, 80%, and the 3x1 is at 85 to 90%. What's that, boys? That's some linear progression. You've got 3x5, 75%. So this is 15 times 75. This is 9 times 80. This is 3 times 90. And even without doing the math, this is big, this is medium, this is small. And the way that linear progression affects your CNS is you can start out big, but as you go through a block, you're going to experience fatigue. Your CNS is going to react. You're going to get fatigued. You're not going to be able to do as much. So you go into that medium, you progress, but you increase the weight. You get that ego going. So technically, you're working harder. It feels harder. It's heavier. Then you go down, you're doing singles. The volume has drastically decreased, but the weight that you're using has drastically increased throughout the block. That's linear periodization. Progressive overload. Progressive overload. Synonymously, it's the same as linear periodization, but it's done in a different way. So linear periodization will look a lot like what we just went over, where in a single block, it's going to look like that 75%, 80%, 90%. That's linear. What progressive overload does is it tacks on a little bit more. So there's two ways. There's two options. I don't like that bracket. Get the fuck out of here. So, yeah, mathy brackets. Yeah. I trained to be a teacher, studied education in college. So, 75%. How do we progress that? How do we overload it? You can add 5 pounds. Yeah. 80%. How do you progress that? How do you overload that? Add 5 pounds. Add 5 pounds. That is option one. You just take what you did in the previous block, you add 5 pounds. There's a second way to do it. Add 5%. Add 5%. Add 5%. So, what this turns into, if you do the first way that we just talked about, you got 75 pounds plus 5 pounds. 80% plus 5 pounds, 3x3. 90%, 85 to 90%. Don't get too cocky with your numbers. Plus 5 pounds. What does that look like in your own personal percentages? For me personally, that'd be like a cum drop in the bucket. But for a new lifter, specifically imagine like a 92-pound female lifter going into the gym for the first time. Add 5 pounds, that can be a massive PR on the bar. It's a significant amount of weight. Every lifter is different. But you take this progression 2, where you're adding 5%, I go from squatting 750 pounds to 800. That is a 50-pound sway. That is significantly more difficult to do with heavier weights. Because as the weights get heavier, the effort that it takes to do those weights gets harder. It's not a linear progression. Why I said earlier that this is for beginners, because when you're newer to the gym, this works perfectly. It keeps you out of the hospital, keeps you uninjured, and it builds the love for the sport. So You take that 92-pound girl, first time in the gym, she's done a block. Add 5%. If she's benching 100-pound bench at 92 pounds is actually really good. If she's squatting 100 pounds, you add 5%, she's squatting 105 pounds. If she's squatting 200 pounds, she's squatting 210 pounds. See how it's very kind of It's there, but it's not over incumbent. You're actually able to make that progression. So this goes from being a 3x5 at 75% to a 3x5 at 80%. You take that 80%, I'm getting a little too aggressive with this. 3x3 at 85% and a 3x1 at 95%. Now, if you're smart, you see how this is a problem. Because you do it again, you're at 85, 90, 100. Can you max out 3 times in a row? No. Take it again, you're doing 90, 95. Can you still see this? Yes. 105. Can you do 105% of whatever you're doing 3 times? No. So progressive overload and linear progression eventually hit a point where they are not really viable. But the program that as beginners you should be running should be based off of progressive overload and linear progression, because there's a phenomenon that is known as newbie gains. So let's look at strength over time again. You got strength over time. You start off somewhere. You go to the gym, you're consistent for about a month, your strength skyrockets. It's not going to happen like you're not going to be skyrocketing forever. You're genetically predispositioned as individuals to have a point where the skyrocketing, the adaptation to the new stimulus, is not going to be there anymore. And it's going to slow down. And it's going to slow down. And it's going to slow down. And you're going to be at a plateau. Progressive overload is good till about here. When you get your newbie gains and they start to peter out, once you hit a plateau, or once you're struggling and it's taking a lot longer for you to put on gains, put on pounds on your PRs than previously, that's when you become an intermediate lifter and you need to start doing a little bit of different thing with your programming. But that's a topic of a different video. We're going over how to be a beginner powerlifter. But progressive overload and linear progression programs are really good at building up your initial newbie gains in a controlled manner, and this will actually put you at a better spot starting than you would be if you were just going to the gym and maxing out every day, because then it goes like this, and then you wisen up and you're like this. So you've got this difference of being stupid and maxing out all the time. I did that. Don't make my mistakes. So, progressive overload. Deload. Deload. Deloading is one of the most important concepts in powerlifting, because when you're powerlifting, when you do any sort of action repetitively and you kind of progress your body, you progress your strength, you progress anything, you're going to accumulate fatigue. What does deload do? Deload manages your fatigue. Puts it in a nice little box, puts a little bow on it, and it tells it, go fuck itself. That's now a pumpkin. So what a deload is it's a mitigation of your fatigue. So what a deload does, when you deload, is important, because you can't deload all the time. Otherwise, you're not going to get strong. You can deload too often. That's going to stagnate your progress, because you're kind of deloading is pretty lazy. A lot of newbie lifters don't like deloading because it's too easy. But it's a mitigation of your fatigue because fatigue leads to injury and you don't want to get injured. So at the program that we've been looking at, we've got the 3x5, 3x3, 3x1. At this point, you've got low fatigue. Nice yogurt right there. Right here, you've got some fatigue. And right here at the 3x1, when you're doing your singles, you're going to have a bit of fatigue. Now, I don't say you're maxing out your fatigue because you don't want to max out your fatigue. That's when you collapse. Not fun. But you start off low fatigue, you accumulate fatigue. This rest is your deload. And it resets your fatigue for the most part. Now, what a deload looks like is going to look different for the way that you're going about things. Deloading, this method of deloading is the old school powerlifter method for deloading, which comes from multiply powerlifting, where the 3x5, 3x3, 3x1 can look like doing singles at 1K in a full suit, maybe some triples at 800, and then doing 3x5 with no suit on at 405. This is how deloads kind of came to fruition. You start out light, you get heavier, you start to accumulate fatigue. You want to take a nap after every training session after your week 3, so you take a deload. So you're deloading every 4th week. Now, as you progress and as we've progressed the knowledge base of powerlifting as a community, deloads have started doing a little bit of a different thing where you deload your load. So this is a graph episode. We've got volume over time. So that was a terrible line. In a single block, your volume kind of does a thing like that, where it's reducing. You take a deload, where you take a day, a week, where you're taking loads that are somewhere between probably 25 to 75% of the weight that you've been using. You're deloading your training. You've got this week or day here. I'd say I'd rather you guys do weeks, because when you start to do deload days, it gets a little bit fancy, and we start to get a little bit more into undulations and things like that of similar types of training. We've got considerations, more variables going on. So you've got block 1, you've got your deload, and then your volume kind of, it can either decrease or increase. So your capacity has increased. You've reduced your volume, and you've increased your volume to the point where you're ending at where you started at the previous block. You take another deload where it's right here. You've got another block going on here, and maybe your volume is dropped. You're doing heavier stuff, and then you deload. So what does that really look like? It's going to take a little bit of math. 50% of 75% is going to be 37.5%, 40%, and then that's 45%. So these are the weights approximately. So you could go 37.5%. That's the lightest weight that you should probably go on a deload. But you can max out at probably 60% with a 1 by whatever volume you're doing. So like we're doing a 3x5, 3x3, 3x1. 60%, you probably do a 3x1 at whatever the movement that you're doing. So if you're deloading your bench, I mean, this is the more advanced version that I said I wasn't going to talk about. If you're deloading your bench, you're doing 3x1s, you're doing singles, you do a 1x1 at 60% or 1x3. Get the volume reduced because you're also reducing the load. You're using about 75% to 25% of whatever load that you've been doing. So, but that's a little bit more advanced. That takes into consideration that with your squat, your bench, and your deadlift, your CNS reacts to them differently, your central nervous system. So your squat, if you're doing an undulated deload, your squat, you can deload every 6-ish weeks. Your deadlift, you can deload every 4-ish weeks. Because the deload affects your CNS a lot more intensely than your squat does. Your squat doesn't kill your CNS as much as your deadlift does. Bench is the weird one because you can go 12 weeks without deloading your bench as long as your progression is sinusoidal. You've got your progression going, you've got it coming up, you've got it coming down. My current program right now doesn't have me deloading my bench. I do not deload my bench for an entire 6-month span because we have so much data on my bench that we have it so primed with the sinusoidal wave that we've got to load up. We've got a starting point, it loads up, we drop it down, load it back up, drop it back down, and it sawtooths until we're at a peak block where it just skyrockets and it also dies at the same time. And then I cry, I freak out, I want to pull out of the meat. Deload happens, or the, what are the kids calling it? The taper happens, and it's actually, woo, we're all the way over here. Manly sounds only. Deload. When should you deload? Squat, 6 weeks. Bench, don't do 12 weeks. Do like 8. And then deadlift, 4-ish weeks. And this should be, if you want to be good little boys and girls, it's going to look like 50% of training max 5x1 to 3. And don't be heroes. This is a recovery week where you're resting, you're recovering, you're managing your fatigue. If you can do 3 without straining, you're doing good. Otherwise, do singles. I did singles for 7 years straight, 50% of training max. And I was doing every 4th week. So I was deloading it like my deadlift. I got to a 2,300 total with this stuff. Training max. Training max, boys. Why do we use a training max? What is a training max? When you compete, got this strength over time. Your strength is up here. Your strength is max. That is how high you can go. The day after you compete, your body implodes and it dive bombs. You take a week to recover, you get back up to a point, you take a hypertrophy block, and your strength slowly progresses from there. You've got an angle, and then you take this, you peak it, and hopefully it's somewhere above where you peaked it last time. So you start off strong, you get wicked weak, depressed, you're a lonely little boy, you recover, you take a hypertrophy, you get bigger, and then the entire time that you're working on your hyperplasia, you're getting stronger. But this entire time, from here to here, you are not as strong as you are on meet day. When you're on meet day, you're at a new max. Every meet day, you're on a new max. Every training day, you've got this difference of where you are in relation to your max. So any given training day, you are not as strong as you were on the platform as long as you are peaking correctly, as long as you are following block periodization correctly, and you've got a peak block that puts you at a new max on the platform. Your gym PRs should be lower than your platform PRs. You don't want to bust your load before you get to your date, right? So everything in the gym might as well just be an empty bar. Might as well just be 135. But once you're on the platform, everything goes off to open powerlifting. And that's where the shit matters. All of this stuff right here, that's what builds you to get to there. The weights here don't matter. The weights here are not what's important. Everything here is zero, basically. The only time where the bar is not zero is when you're on the platform. Let's just get that into your head. Don't be a hero in training because you won't be a hero on the platform. If you're consistent, disciplined, a good little boy or girl in training, then you can be a hero on the platform. So there's this difference right here, or this entire block area, where you are not as strong as you are on the platform. So what we do is we use a training max. A training max is going to be somewhere between, oh, good grief, that's not even, 80% to 95%, depending on how much you suck at competing. So every single time that you see a percentage on your program, it's going to be based off of either 80% or 95% of whatever your comp PRs are. Training max, 80% to 95% of whatever your platform numbers are. And if you base those off of gym numbers and your gym numbers are higher than your platform numbers, you're a disappointment. Your platform numbers should always be higher than your gym numbers. Otherwise, your standards of your training are not up to par as to what the platform standards are. You could be squatting high in training. You have no verification other than the Instagram homies who say, yeah, nice squat. Comp numbers are the only numbers that matter. Gym numbers don't matter. Gym PRs don't count as real PRs. They're just Instagram PRs, which are fake. Platform PRs, you're in a safer environment. Your risk of injury when you are PRing are at its peak. So you want to be in the safest environment for that. That's the platform. That's when you've got a million spotters there. That's when you've got people completely dedicated to your health and safety on the platform. And you have people verifying that the level and the execution of your lists are up to par with everyone else. Now there's differences in feds and stuff, but if you count your gym PRs as are real PRs, no. The only PRs that matter are your comp PRs. And that's what we base our training maxes off of. Central nervous system. Central nervous system. This is not a powerlifting specific term. It is a medical term that refers to your central nervous system. I'm not a doctor. Damn it. It's going to determine how strong you are on any given day. You notice how when I was talking about your training max, any given training day, you're not as strong as you are on the platform. That's because the programming in powerlifting is a ability, it allows you to tap into training your central nervous system to perform better under heavier loads. So there's progressions in block periodization, such as a peaking protocol, which will allow you to get acclimated, your central nervous system acclimated to heavier loads. So a peaking program, so this is an example of a peaking program. which it's a 6-week peaking program where you compete on the 6th week. Week 1, you're doing 3x1, 80%. Week 2, 2x1, 90%. Week 3, 1x1, 100%. Now, it's split right there. Once you hit 100%, everything else feels like garbage until you compete, because we've got this special deload going on in there that's going to allow your central nervous system and everything else to rebound in this idea called supercompensation, which is basically a slingshot effect for your central nervous system. But we prime our central nervous system in order to compete. So ignoring, you're not going to ignore the peaking program. You probably got your notebooks out and you're scribbling it down saying, I'm going to PR at my next meet because I stole this peaking program from this video from the very white boy. What does your central nervous system dictate? What is included in priming your central nervous system? Your food, your water, your sleep. Those are the 3 basics of your central nervous system. If your food sucks, your CNS is going to suck. Your lifting is going to be compromised because of it. If you're dehydrated, same thing happens. If you sleep inadequately, now, doesn't mean, hey, be in bed for 8 hours a night. If you snore, you're not asleep the entire time. You need as much REM as possible because that's when the recovery happens in your sleep cycles. So you could be in bed for 8 hours a night, but you could only be sleeping for 2 because you're snoring, you got sleep apnea. So you got to take care of your food. You got to follow a nutrition plan. Powerlifting is not just being an unaccompanied minor at a birthday party. You got to actually follow a nutrition plan. Water, minimum 1 gallon a day. You just fill up a gallon, put some Crystal Light in it, make sure it's empty by the end of the day. It's not that hard. Your sleep, make sure you're going to sleep. This also feeds into your circadian rhythm, which is dictating how effective is your sleep. It's basically your body's timer. You get hungry at this time, you get tired at this time, you get cranky at this time, you get this at this time. That's your body's internal clock. That's your circadian rhythm. And it's highly dictated by how you sleep. How you sleep is going to dictate your circadian rhythm. If your circadian rhythm is off, literally all your CNS is just going to go kaput. And you're not going to have a good time. You ever notice how when you pull an all-nighter back when you were a teenager, you felt groggy and disgusting for like a week straight? That's your circadian rhythm being off. That's your central nervous system imploding because you didn't take care of yourself. So on top of that, there's also, for the professionals, and I say that because you're going to use this as an excuse as to not do it, cardio. Do cardio. It's not going to hurt your gains. In fact, the better your cardio is, the better your recovery is going to be. The better your recovery is going to be, the more primed your central nervous system is going to be. The more primed your central nervous system is going to be for every training day. Remember when we were talking about deloads, how it was kind of ish this many weeks, ish that many weeks? The better your recovery is, the better CNS is, the less often you have to deload, because deload is to manage your fatigue. If you do your cardio, if you get your sleep in order, if you get your water in order, get your food in order, and then last, life stress. If you get your life stress in order, you don't have to deload as often. You're able to extend that because your body is going to be able to work on your fatigue a little bit better. Your body can't tell the difference between mental, physical, and emotional stress. Life stress is work stress, relationship stress, other stress. I'm too autistic to know what other stressors people have. Money stress, that one. You got all these stressors. This entire thing, your entire training is physical stress. If you work a physical job, it's physical stress. If you live with an abusive wife who is an alcoholic, that's life stress. if you got fired from your job, life stress, money stress. So doing cardio helps you recover from all those stressors. Doing your cardio, getting your sleep in order, getting your water, getting your food, helps your body recover the fatigue accumulated by those stressors. You're better able and better equipped to deal with those stressors. Not a doctor, but this shit's real good. Do it. Shit's better than drugs. I mean, drugs don't hurt as long as they're prescribed by a doctor, or like the bald guy in our gym wearing a fanny pack. But central nervous system, really important. It is what determines how strong you're going to be on a certain day. And it's all determined on how well you go about doing a recovery. And also, you can see some really cool stuff happen once you have all of this stuff under control, because you're going to be way stronger, you're going to get bigger PRs on the platform, and you're going to feel really cool. You're going to go out to a pussy. I'll get back to you on how accurate that is. This one, I'm pretty sure if I say that word, YouTube is going to take this video down. Boys, men, pay close attention. Make it bigger. So I don't actually know how long I've been talking for. I went over a lot of really basic concepts that no one really tells anyone about. A lot of what these things are learned through contextual analysis. And when people talk, hey, oh, this linear progression, this progressive overload, this, that, and then they never actually talk about what it actually is. And it's really confusing for beginning powerlifters as to what exactly is it. I was going to go over today about 531, which is probably the perfect beginner powerlifting program. But I think we're running out of time, and your attention spans is probably like a goldfish. So we're going to go over that in the next video. So we went over a lot of concepts, and I forgot the list of concepts that I talked about. Deload, training max, linear progression, progressive overload, block periodization. That's a lot of information all at once. But basically, that is how programs are structured. If you're a new lifter, that is how you should structure your programs for yourself if you're programming yourself to guarantee progress. There's a lot of other intermediate factors that come in that we'll probably have to make another video about, these intermediate concepts of powerlifting that are very important to incorporate once you've hit your first plateau. Because when you're a beginning powerlifter, you're getting a lot of newbie gains. You're going to get a lot of newbie gains. I personally had about 2 years worth of newbie gains. Some people, it's a month. Some people, it's 2 months. And the more that you go about learning and progressing through your adventure through powerlifting, the better, more efficient, and another synonym that is positive, your progress will be in the sport of powerlifting. And this beginning concepts, the 531 program that I'll talk about next week, I kind of gave you an intro with every single, we kind of analyzed it and went over it. It's a good idea for you guys to follow with some sort of progressive overload incorporated into it. But we're going to go more in depth as to 531 in the next video. But as a newbie lifter, it's really confusing to get into the sport of powerlifting because the barrier to entry is so low, but the barrier to entry for the conceptual stuff is pretty high. And a lot of people don't make it out of the beginner levels of concepts when it comes to powerlifting. And hopefully I'm going to be your guide on this journey to be the best powerlifters you can, and eventually get you guys going and hitting some pretty sick PRs on the platform. So if you have any questions about anything that I said, or anything that you feel I might say, or just general overall questions that I can make a video about, because I will make videos, more of these videos continuing going on, let me know what you guys want to know, because I have a lot of knowledge, and I'm a wealth of knowledge, and all of my information is either firsthand or secondhand. And secondhand is usually from the source, because I know a lot of people who have come up with concepts outside of Russia and Bulgaria and Romania. But like everyone in America, for the most part, got them on speed dial. But let me know if you like this video, leave a like, probably refer back to it multiple times, especially once you start hearing these terms used in the gym when people are talking about the programming, when they're talking about programming their clients, stuff like that, because this is not only for beginner powerlifters, but once powerlifters get to a certain point, they're going to start to want to coach. And there's a lot of irresponsible coaches out there who kind of don't understand the basics of powerlifting. And so come back to this video once you're at that point, so that you can solidify your concepts and what you got going on in your head when it comes to the semantics and all the definitions going on in powerlifting and how you should go about powerlifting programming. So like it, comment your questions, subscribe for more. I post I post these once a week, and I also post my training vlogs and my daily whatevers 4 times a week approximately, if I'm on the ball. This past week's been a little hectic, so I haven't been super good at that. But also share if you have a homie who's a little behind, or if you have a group of friends who are trying to get into powerlifting, this is a good start for you guys to start understanding a lot of the concepts associated with being thick, swole, juicy, and an absolute animal in the gym. Not Vikings, not lions, not tigers. This isn't a zoo. This is a gym. We're being animals in the metaphorical sense, not literal sense. I don't go to the vet, but I do take veterinary medicines, like horse liniment. Anyways, I think that's it. Patrick out.